And we're muted. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time for Silver and Black today, a Raiders postgame show here, and we're glad you're with us. We are an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. If you don't already subscribe to the show, do us a favor. Make sure you do that. In fact, we're going to flash up this QR code. Guess what? You can scan that with that little phone of yours, and you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. Also, if you're watching us on video, brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. This is the BetUS postgame reaction show. So make sure you like, also subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you know every time we have a new video. Scott Gulbransen back with you, along with my good friend Murf from Raiders Fan Radio. He's going to do our Voice of the Fan segment that we do every week here on the show. So really appreciate Murf being with us. And of course, the Raiders, unfortunately, again, double-digit losers to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 28-13. This game, boy, it started off rough. Then the defense seemed to get a little better, but the offense couldn't get going. Aiden O'Connell hurt on what should have been a late penalty. It should have been a roughing the passer call, never called by the NFL. He goes out in an air cast. Desmond Ridder comes in. Raiders can't get anything going, and they now lose their ninth straight game. Yep, ninth straight game, and the Raiders struggling for one of the longest losing streaks in franchise history. Murph, let's go to you. First of all, this game started really rough. The Buccaneers looked like a juggernaut on the first two drives. They were driving it well. They're up 14-0 before the Raiders kind of woke up and started to play some defense. But story of the season, there's not a lot to add. I mean, it's like, look, defense plays well in spots, doesn't play well in spots, and the offense just can't get anything going except the running game. But for some reason, inexplicably, they don't go back to that enough, and they can't find Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Scott, first off, appreciate you having me here for the Voice of the Fan segment here at Silver and Black today. Always a great time to join you and the amazing chat room in there. Appreciate everybody that's joining us live tonight there on the YouTubes. And, this game, it's just been such a weird season for the Raiders. I've turned a calendar a handful of times now and seen some weird seasons for the Raiders, but this is an odd one, just in terms of the dynamics amongst the team. The Raiders started getting their butts whooped there early on, molly whooped, as you guys like to say. That happens early on, and it was, eerily reminiscent of, I don't know, how about that game against the Rams or that game against the Falcons in Atlanta, who we have to deal with next week as they come to Allegiant. But it was like, this thing is going to go off the rails real quick. And then all of a sudden, the defense brought the team back. And it was like we started to see some things to be encouraged about. We saw, some effective play, obviously, out of Max Crosby, but how about freaking Chase on with the batted pass and then the pick? But then, in typical Raider fashion, you can't do two good things in a row. God forbid you do two good things in a row. And so the thing started to get back on the rails, and it looked like the Raiders were going to make a game out of it. And then what was really interesting to me, Scott, and this is the first time I think we've seen this in a while. We saw a lot of bad decisions. Bad decisions by Aiden, throwing off his back foot, floating a ball down, right? We saw a bad decision by AP, finally figuring out what the challenge flag was and pulling it out of his pocket. We saw a lot of things happen to the Raiders in this game that they got bailed out of. Things actually happened in our favor that negated those bad decisions. And the Raiders hung around in this game until, like you said, NFL officiating showed up. And this is not Murf, conspiracy theory guy over here, but for a league that consistently and constantly focuses on protecting quarterbacks, they do an awful crappy job of protecting quarterbacks on certain football teams. And I think that Abe's already dealing with an injury before that stupid play happens. And then God knows what, I don't even know. I didn't hear, did he break his leg? What the deal is, the hypocrisy of the NFL at times really blows my mind. And it's more than just the protecting of quarterbacks, but there are, for a league that's brilliant at marketing and markets itself globally so effectively, they are awful hypocritical when it comes down to certain things. And Scott, frankly, Raider fan or not, that drives me badass crazy to see these kind of things unfold in an NFL game and just the overall structure of the NFL at times.
Yeah, and it's the reason I called it inexplicable is because in any other game, now I'm not saying it doesn't happen to other teams. I know Raider Nation is hypersensitive to this because of the real well documented kind of bias against the Raiders in the past. It doesn't seem like it's been as bad the last few years on that, but I've seen it happen in other games too, where a call that's barely should be anything where a guy actually tries to roll off, they call roughing the passer. Then clearly here, the ball is out of Aiden O'Connell's hand completely. The defender is not in the process of trying to get him. It's after the fact, and he shoves him that results in an injury. And listen, it should have been a penalty whether he got injured or not. And to me, you're absolutely right. It's hypocritical because they're not consistent. And this is the problem with NFL officiating. It's not that bad calls don't happen, they happen all the time. It's just that they're inconsistent with these areas where they're focusing on. Of course, this one, of course, with the hip drop tackles and all that. We've seen early in the season, man, every tackle that was a hip drop or could have been close to it was called. And then in recent weeks, we've seen guys get injured by hip drop tackles where they don't even call it. So the consistency there, you 100% hit on it there, and unfortunately, it took Aiden O'Connell out of the game. Might be the end of his season. We don't know the extent of the injury. Hopefully, if anybody saw or have seen an update, drop it into the chat there as we're live, so we can't really see right now. But to me, this game came back down to a lot of the things we've seen all season. Again, turnovers, and the Raiders got 2 of those turnovers back. Right, those 2 interceptions, one by O'Connell, one by Ritter, that hit the ground because the Buccaneers couldn't hold on to the ball. They both should have been turnovers. So the Raiders got lucky there. But then we see the Raiders do something better, right? Which was they created turnovers for the first time. I tweeted out, hey, this is the longest since 1959 that a team has given away 12 fumbles and hasn't gotten one. Boom, next drive, they get a fumble. The problem is they use that one and they score off it. But then after that, the other 3 turnovers they got, they did nothing with. And that's the point with turnovers. You can't just get them. You can't get the takeaways and not do anything with them. You have to be able to do it. And the Raiders, despite having a nice game by Sincere McCormick, we'll get to the stats in a second. The Raiders, 4 of 13 again on third down. All right. They were 1 of 4 in the red zone. And despite 64 offensive plays, they only averaged 4.5 yards per play. Whereas the Buccaneers averaged 7.1, a lot of that coming in the first half, obviously. But the Raiders seemingly can't get it done on defense when they have to. Max Crosby, the defensive front, had a very nice game. And despite they pressured Baker Mayfield, they even forced a fumble there, but they weren't able to shut them down at key moments. They had the ball longer than Tampa Bay. So this idea that they're on the field longer than the other team because the offense doing nothing, not true. The offense had their opportunities. I mean, they had 64 offensive plays. They had more offensive plays, Murf, than Tampa Bay did. Okay. So again, you're seeing key situations where they turn the ball over. They don't do anything with it. We also saw some coaching things we'll get into in a minute, but this one was frustrating because they seemingly were running the ball and doing a good job of it. Sincere McCormick, 15 rushes, 78 yards, an average of 5.2. Go at it. And then they go back from it and they don't seemingly, I think, hit it on the right turn. This is where Scott Turner at times looks brilliant and other times just like looks like he's lost.
I mean, certainly the offense looks better, which is nice. I mean,
True.
considering where we were at, though,
Yes.
that isn't too tough to get demonstrative improvement over what this Luke Getsy offense was. But I'm with you, Scott. Like, I don't understand the reasoning behind getting away from things. Like, why not? Like, if you have something and it's working, it's almost like the Raiders for a long time have outthought themselves. It's like if you've got something that's going one direction, why is Brock Bowers in this game? Why are we not throwing him the football? Like, that was and I understand that the running game is going early, but why are we not investing and involving that young man who is clearly the freaking the most, aside from Jacoby Myers, the potentially the most dominant player that we have on offense. So why are we not getting him involved earlier? And whatever, we could get down to quarterback decision making and all those kinds of things. But it didn't strike me, at least watching the game with my fan eyes, that Brock Bowers was not being thrown to because Aiden O'Connell was deciding to go to other people or couldn't see him or whatever. It seemed like he wasn't part of it. There was, how many times did the announcers call out when there was a red zone possession on like third down and 89 is on the sideline? Like, in what world does that make sense? What, does he need a breather? Like, stop. Like, what is he, 22 years old? He don't need a breather. You know what I mean? Like, he's fine. Put him in the damn game. Max Crosby plays 100% of the snaps for the freaking Raiders. Brock Bowers can do the same. Like, get him in the game. We heard in the offseason all along leading up to the start of the season that Brock Bowers was an absolute red zone nightmare, that he was, according to the Raiders coaching staff, unguardable.
Total
Why
mismatch.
isn't he in the damn game? Like that it is totally confusing to me, Scott. And to build further upon your other points, there is like the Raiders seemingly have had trouble for a million years now capitalizing on fortunate things, whether that be a turnover, whether that be, any kind of momentum. Like we are the kings, we being the Raiders, kings of killing our own momentum. It's just
Oh yeah.
been part of that the Raider story for a very, very long time. And on top of that, the last time we had a closer was 52, Khalil Mack, a guy that could pick off Cam Newton and run it into the end zone and end a football game, a guy that could freaking get a sack on 3rd and long, then not allow whoever, Alex Smith or whoever else, to run around and to create. And he was a guy that could get to the quarterback and close out a game. I would say offensively, you could say Josh Jacobs was a closer for us offensively, although running game is not the thing that decides the ultimate freaking outcome of these Raider games. But point being, though, is like, where is the closer? Like, where do we shut this thing down? When the Raiders have the opportunity to shut down a drive, where is that guy? Who is that guy? And it's again, Scott, it's been a long time since we've seen those two things. The Raiders capitalize on momentum and then shut it down when it's its most crucial point.
Yeah, and I think that is important, because what happens is you're just not closing things out, even on little drives here and there. That was one of the things that I noticed too about this was, you saw Tampa Bay struggle in the second half, right? They came out after that incredible first couple drives and they stalled. But then you look at the numbers, Murph. The Raiders gave up 152 yards rushing. They gave up 420 yards in total offense. I know a bunch of them came at the end there. But again, an average gain of 7.1. So the defense, while it plays well in spots, it's not playing well together and consistently enough to where a game like that, or a game last week with the Chiefs, where you're close, because seemingly it's closer than the score dictates at times, but they just can't, like you said, they can't close it out. And then you don't have the offensive complement to that. You don't have the complementary football. You have Sincere McCormick come out and look like an NFL running back, which is very good for the Raiders. But then Aiden O'Connell, I have to wonder, and I'm not making excuses for him because he didn't look good today. He came off that illness. I don't know if he was 100% or not, but he certainly didn't do that. But then I go back to coaching. For those of you who think that Antonio Pierce deserves a second year, which I think is absolutely folly, it's 3rd and 2 in the third quarter, 3rd and 2, and you're having Aiden O'Connell run a quarterback sneak. Why? At 3rd and it's not like this guy is Josh Allen or this guy is Lamar Jackson, okay? 3rd and 2, and you have Sincere McCormick who's running the ball really well. And this is where initially he hurt his ankle or his knee. We don't know which one. And they eventually got the first down on 4th. So again, these questions of what are you doing on offense and I think what happens is sometimes you put these players in positions where they can't win because of the decision making. Now, there's times when they own it, they don't execute. But I also think that there's times when coaching is suspect and we don't know what the decision making is. We also had time management issues again today. But from your standpoint, the closer, I think this also gets to the point, which is a lot of people thought a lot about this Raider defense because of how it closed out last year. At the same time, I always looked at it as very good at spots, but they don't have much depth. And I think that's what that gets to, is with all those injuries on defense, especially 2 key ones to be specific, or 3 now. If you look at that, it's hard, Murph, because those guys go down and what you have behind them isn't exactly going to make up much of the slack.
No, and I think the Raiders' depth was, or lack of depth, as you said, was highly exposed today. Heck, our depth in a lot of positions are exposed today. And you know what I'm going to say next, Scott? It's Carter Bradley season. Like, let's get 14 going. CB 14 time, baby. Like, what are we doing with Desmond Ridder in there? Like, let's go with some Carter Bradley. But anyways, point being, though, is that, we were exposed on a lack of depth. And listen, that's what you get from a 2-win team. This team is 2-11. And anybody that, to go back to some of the coaching, miscalculations, in fairness, that were there. Anybody that's clamoring for, this AP and the entirety of this staff to come back and give them, the injuries and the, the lack of quarterback play, whatever. Like, at what point do we just stop making excuses and not let that, we as fans or us on X and all that kind of stuff. Not that any of that shit matters. The Raiders are going to do what the Raiders are going to do, and it's entirely out of our control. But I would say this: that at what point can we just say to ourselves, honestly, as fans, when are we going to stop making excuses? excuses? When are we going to do, as a good friend of ours, Wayne Mabry, the violator, what did he say? He told us on our show, you never lower the standard for that shield. When are we going to quit lowering the standard? When are we going to quit making excuses for our quarterback? When are we going to quit making excuses for our head coach? When are we going to quit making excuses for injury? They're talking about the Buccaneers today had dealt with the most injuries other than, I don't know, whatever, however many teams. Those things are just inherent in the NFL. Bad calls happen in the NFL. When are we going to quit making excuses as fans for the failure and the underachievement for the Las Vegas Raiders? When? Like, at what point? Like, and I know people love it when I pick on Derek, and they love to call me out for picking on Derek. But how many apology letters did we get about Derek Carr? Like, let's stop that. Let's stop apologizing for the Raiders, and let's hold them accountable as fans for their lack of success. It's 2 freaking wins. What do you want? You want to keep this coaching staff? You want to keep that quarterback? God dang it, I love Aiden O'Connell, and I think it's highly unfortunate for the way that he got hurt on that play. And prayers up, and I respect that young man, and he's gritty, and he has toughness, and there's no question to his character and his ability and his dedication. But when it comes to playing quarterback in the NFL, he ain't there. And it's okay. I'm not either. You aren't, Scott. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's quit apologizing for what the Raiders are, and then hold them accountable for what they aren't.
Right. And that's the thing, too, the excuse thing, injuries, all that kind of stuff. Look, they played a Buccaneers team today. I'm not kidding you. The Raiders, if you look at the number of injuries the Raiders have on defense, 3 significant players. You could argue maybe 4, but really 3. The Buccaneers had 10 offensive players injured today, including 4 starters, or 5 starters, excuse me. So it's not an excuse. They still won the game. They still did what they had to do, and that's what you do, right? You come out, you play, and I just think that the way this is gone is you can like a guy, you can like Antonio Pierce, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with liking the guy, but it's just not getting done, and it's not just because of injury. It's because of a lot of things. And some of that's his fault, some of it's not. Again, it's not all his fault that they're 2-10, but it's definitely partly his fault. So you got to look at that and say, okay, where does responsibility go? Team has to get better. And so we'll talk about that when we come back. We're going to take our first break real quick for our podcast audience. If you're on video, just stay with us. We're not going anywhere. But we're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll talk about Sincere McCormick, because I was sincerely impressed by him again. He's not lighting the world on fire. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. And some people messaging me saying, hey, we found our running back for next year. Hold off on that for a second. I'm not saying he doesn't play in the mix, but we'll talk about his day. We'll also talk about what's left for this team to do as they move to go home to play the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see how that game ends up going next week. Hey, they have another opportunity. You're listening to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, brought to you a video. It's our postgame show, the BetUS postgame show, coming back right after this word. All right, welcome back. Silver and Black today, the postgame edition. Scott Gulbransen along with Murf from Raiders Fan Radio. We are an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio. Do us a favor and rate and review as well. If you're watching us on video, thank you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell. Video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. And I have to mention, too, before we move on, that BetUS, you get 150% sign-up bonus. Yes, we're giving you that 150% sign-up bonus using the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. I had a bad day today. Some people followed me, and they messaged me saying, I followed you and we lost. Yes, I lost today. I had the over, but anyway, you can't lose getting 150% sign-up bonus. YouTube 150 up to $2,000. Start playing today, and thank you to the people at BetUS making the show for you possible here on video. Scott Gulbransen and Murf with you. And Murf, Sincere McCormick, let's talk about it. I'll go to the numbers now just to get everybody up to speed a little bit here on Sincere. Again, 15 rushes, 78 yards, average of 5.2. Very good. Long was almost 30 yards at 29. And I think what we see with Sincere McCormick is a guy who could be in the mix next year. I think the Raiders will draft a running back and see who else they sign, but they do need a young running back. And I think he has shown the explosiveness. He's working hard. He hits the hole hard. He is a tough-nosed runner, Murph. And to see the Raiders establish the run, even if they don't follow through on it at times, That's why they were in this game for most of the game, was because they were able to do what Antonio Pierce talked about in the offseason, which is we're going to be physical, we're going to run the ball. And that's exactly what he did today.
And shout out that young man, and I got a lot of respect for him for hanging in there. Had a great career at UTSA, hadn't had to deal with a lot of injuries, and being on the practice squad for the Raiders, kind of getting buried on the depth chart behind Josh Jacobs, and then ultimately Zamir White, and so for him to remain resilient and that work ethic and the character that he's demonstrated, it's a good story. Like, that's a fun story for the Raiders, and so I like to sell, and fun for him, and celebrate him as a Raider fan. Also, to that said, one of the things that we talked about last week, coming off of that Chiefs game, was that what are the areas that the Raiders got better? Because it's been a slow downhill process of regression ever since we beat the Ravens in Baltimore. And so since then, what has gotten better? And coming off of that Chiefs game, we talked about the running game. And I want to highlight that again, because they talked about it today. This is what the fifth game or third game, whatever it is, that where you've got all five of the same starting offensive linemen. And that's the thing about the running game. You can have Brock Bowers make dynamic catches downfield, and you can have YOLO balls that get thrown up there and guys make great plays on them, all that stuff. But when it comes to the running game, individual performance is important. We saw him spin out of some great tackles and look great and dynamic when it came to escaping tackles, past the line of scrimmage. But also too, you got to have those five big fellas up front. You got to have Jacoby Myers crack backing on people. You got to have all that stuff all working in unison, and you got to have Turner calling in great plays instead of when it's 3rd and 2, instead of running a delayed handoff or a pitch a la Luke Getsy, and making the guy run 7 yards in order to gain 2. Instead, they just turn around and hand it to the guy, let him go. And so those big fellas up front, I think, have really showed a lot today. And again, if we're going to look at areas of improvement, not only in the running game, but collectively the offensive line as well, Scott. And I know JPJ had a bad penalty, and that's going to happen with rookies. But as an overall, these 5 guys up front, that's something to be encouraged about going forward into next year, especially if we're talking about a young quarterback and needing to protect him.
Yeah, and I think too, you saw today as well, Michael Mayer had a great game, 9 targets, 7 catches, 68 yards as well. So they didn't get the ball to Brock Bowers, but he sure found Michael Mayer, which I think shows you, because I know some people, after Michael Mayer was away with his personal reasons, when he came back, we could trade him, we have Brock Bowers. No, you use both those guys. So to your point, you get a quarterback in there. Yeah, you need another wide receiver, but you know what? With those 2 guys, Jacoby Myers, if you can bring him back, I think you're in a good shape. Now, the key there, though, and I want to touch on this because the point about being able to run the ball, you got to be able to run the ball, and they've been doing it more effectively the last 2 games. Unfortunately, hasn't resolved the ability to win a game, but that's okay. Again, it's about progress. But it goes back to quarterback play. For those of you, and I saw a lot of you out there, and I'm not calling out anybody individually because, hey, people get excited, that wanted to name Aiden O'Connell. I had people tell me, hey, we'll just roll with Aiden O'Connell, take Travis Hunter in the 1st round, and we can get a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think you saw today the importance of that. Aiden O'Connell struggled for whatever reason, but then even on some of the plays you saw, he's just not that athletic. It's not that he's not a good quarterback. I think he can be a backup and a very important piece for this Raiders team. I think having a guy like that as your backup is great, especially a young guy who's continuing to learn, because he can throw the ball. He can come out and win a game for you. He can. He's done it. But I think it shows the importance again of quarterback play, Murf. And today you saw a guy on the other side with Baker Mayfield, who was touted, didn't have a good start to his career, kind of punted around, and now he's found his place in Tampa. He didn't have a great game today, but he did enough to win. And I think that's what you see from quarterbacks who get over that hump. And I think the Raiders need that piece. They need somebody who's going to come out there and just lead them and be the alpha dog, if you will. It doesn't have to be he's a yeller or that kind of leader, but somebody who's just going to come out and get it done. And look, if you don't think that quarterback is that important, then you got to look around the league and look at the teams who are doing well. And that's exactly what you see. And it's unfortunate because I think the Raiders do have, even with the trouble up front early on until this offensive line started gelling a little more together, I think they have enough pieces where they could have won a lot more games had they had consistency at quarterback play and then maybe some consistency on the defensive side too.
I agree with you, Scott. And how dare you slander Lamar O'Connell that way, though? I mean, crying out loud, he had that one really nice scramble where it was like it was like the March of the Ents. It was like if anybody's ever seen Lord of the Rings, it was like watching him like go for that first down. And again, I had no disrespect to Aiden, and I love him, but yeah, he's challenged when it comes to certain areas of playing QB, and that's not no fault of his own or his work ethic or anything like that. So it's not like I have fun poking at him a little bit, but we need a quarterback, man. And when you talk about the what Baker did today, Baker's got more rushing yards in his career this season than he ever has, and he's a pretty mobile guy, and was kind of his thing coming out of Oklahoma and all that. Like he was Brett Favre 2.0 and all that stuff that we remember hearing about Baker Mayfield coming out. And so that I'm with you. You've got to have the functional mobility. Hey, right? You got to have that when it comes to the NFL nowadays. And not that you can't be Jared Goff and have success, but ultimately it comes down to like you've got to have when those things do happen, you've got to be able to break out. When the pocket breaks down, you got to be able to create. Heck, Derek is like that. For those of you that want to hear something positive about Derek, there you go. Once upon a time, that guy was epic at getting out of the pocket and being accurate on the run. Like that was part of Derek Carr's game. And so that's what the Raiders are lacking when it comes to quarterback. And frankly, Scott, when it comes to the upcoming draft, not to jump too far ahead, but there's one guy to me that really embodies that ability. And the Raiders took another step further towards securing that. And that is Shedeur Sanders, man. It's like that's kind of where this thing seems to be heading. And I don't know, we can read tea leaves. We can, there's so many volatile things that still we have to go through and variables and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, like that is the perfect guy to be behind this offensive line, to helm the Raiders and to take, and to be able to demonstrate the things that we are currently lacking as a football team offensively. Like to me, like that's where my brain goes. And after that, Scott, like you talked about, going back that, maybe we could draft Travis Hunter and then we could supplement with a later round quarterback. Did anybody watch college football this last weekend? You want Quinn Ewers? You want Carson Beck? You want any of these guys? Like, I mean, it's a hard drop off after Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And I'm not even sold on Cam Ward because a lot of the throws that he makes are picks in the NFL. So I don't know, man. It's slim pickings for the Raiders in the draft this year, Scott. But I'm with you. Like as much of a generational and/or lifetime talent as Travis Hunter is and is going to be in the NFL, we got to swing on a quarterback. We got to swing on a quarterback until we freaking hit on one.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people too talked about free agent market. Really, there's not going to be any good free agent quarterbacks except for Sam Darnold, and they're estimating Sam Darnold is going to get
pay him $50 million a year.
They're estimating $100 to $120 million contract. I don't know that you want to give that to a guy based on 1 year where it appears he figured it out. Now, I hope for his sake. I mean, it's a great story, and maybe he's going to do what Baker Mayfield did, and suddenly he's got it, right? Because he's a young guy. But man, what's a bigger risk, that or taking a young guy and going that route? I think if the Raiders stick where they're at right now and they're in the top two, they'll get one of those quarterbacks, either Sanders, who I agree with you. I think he's a perfect fit. And a lot of people, I think, read too much into Dion saying, "Oh, AP, we love you. We want you to draft our boys." That's more about the Raiders drafting him, not Antonio Pierce, because there's not much to like about a guy who's gone 7-15 and obviously he's lost 9 in a row. But he's just being cordial because they were at an event together. But I do believe, I agree with you. I know some people don't like Shedeur Sanders because of the whatever you want to call it, the cocksureness or the fact that his attitude. He's never been in any trouble, any of that kind of stuff. So I don't know where that comes from. Plus, I think you're right. I think he fits in well with the team and with the Raider motif, if you will, right? He's got that swagger. Don't you want a quarterback who's got swagger? I would. Makes perfect sense to me. So we'll see. But I think that's what the Raiders need to focus on. But in the meantime, the rest of this year, I listen, I know everybody always likes the backup quarterback or the third string quarterback, but the Carter Bradley thing, why not? At this point, Antonio Pierce is trying to save his job. But at the same time, I think that, if you have Desmond Ridder, you know what you have. He obviously doesn't have a lot of confidence in Ridder because he could have started Ridder before and he did not. And so now with Aiden O'Connell, again, we don't know. Hopefully Aiden O'Connell's not out for a significant time, but in an aircast doesn't look good. And if he's out next week, give the kid a chance at home and just see what happens. I mean, again, you have to learn, who do you have developmentally that you want to get a look at in live game action against teams. I mean, the Falcons are in the hunt with the Buccaneers for that NFC title in that division. So they're right knotted up right there. So they have a lot to play for. So they're not coming out and playing patsy ball. They're going to come out and play you hard. Why not let the young quarterback play and see what he's got?
Yeah, I agree, Scott. I mean, it's I mean, and it's funny because I caught a lot of heat about the Carter Bradley thing early on, but like at this point, like for real, like what do you got to lose? Like, like we've already seen what there was a reason he was on the practice squad. Like, and no disrespect to Desmond Ritter, but he is what he is, and so let's look and see what the next level of depth is for this Raiders football team. You know what I mean? Like, and it's because you have to hit on a quarterback. Shout out Martin in the UK. Martin, asked me a question on Twitter this morning, and he was like, "Hey, man," he's like, "So explain. You guys talking on Silver and Black today? Talk about the effectiveness of a rookie contract, what that actually means." And and I give him a fair response. And point being is that, like, if you spend 100, however much money you just said about Sam Darnold, you're not able to take advantage of the ability of drafting a young quarterback. It's so huge. I think it gets lost on folks as much as we as Raider fans. We want to look for the next Jim Plunkett or the next Rich Gannon or whatever. Those days are over, y'all. They just are. Yes, there is a version of that where you have a Sam Darnold or a Baker Mayfield, or whatever, but they are few and farther between than hitting on a top round quarterback. Look at the best teams in the league. They swung for a quarterback, and it's just a matter of fact. It's Josh Allen, it's Joe Burrow, it's Lamar Jackson. Like, all these guys are either top or mid first round picks. And then occasionally you get a team like the Niners that luck out in the 6th round with Brock Purdy. Occasionally those, or the Patriots, if you want to go to Tom Brady. Occasionally those things happen. But for the most part, you got to swing on quarterbacks until you finally freaking get one. And so maybe Carter Bradley is a serviceable QB in the NFL, but until you start him, you don't know that. So let's explore every option, because I think we can all agree fairly is that this league and these teams go the direction of your quarterback. The end. Like, I don't know how it's more the most important position probably in all of sports, more than a goalie, more than a first baseman or a pitcher or whatever. The starting pitchers start every 4 days or 5 days or whatever, and they only throw 100 pitches because that's all they let them do nowadays. Your starting quarterback is in there every game and touches them like it's the most important thing. So focus your importance on acquiring said guy. And until you get one, keep on swinging, man. Because as what's his name? Brent Bean or whoever the guy is, the general manager of the Buffalo Bills, he traded 2 first-rounders to move up and to go get this big quarterback out of Wyoming that people were critical of. And he said, you know what? If it doesn't work out, neither one of us are going to be here anyway. So he did it. That's where Tom Telesco's brain needs to be. That's where the Raiders' brains need to be. I don't care what regime you bring in, swinging a goddamn quarterback until we get one that's undeniable.
Right. And I know a lot of the argument the other way is, well, there's no guarantee. Well, there's no guarantee in anything. There's no guarantee Travis Hunter will be a good NFL player. There's no guarantee that Shedeur Sanders, there's no guarantee any of them will. It doesn't matter how good they are in college, right? But to your point, you got to take a swing. And by the way, I keep telling people this, we talk about the rookie contracts. Why is that important? I had somebody tell, well, why is that important? Because of the money and building the team. Like, you have to have, it's the most expensive position on the field. Okay. So if you go out, let's just sign Sam Darnold instead. Okay. So you sign Sam Darnold. Let's say the market goes crazy. You got to pay him $125 million. Well, that takes away from everything else you got to spend money on, right? So with a rookie quarterback, you don't have to do that. They're going to get their $30 million bonus up front, but their deal is small for the first 5 years, right? Hopefully they have to renegotiate after 3 because they're so damn good. But let's just say they don't. So you do that, and you look at the stats, Murph, 9 of the last 11 Super Bowls. So not just 1 or 2. 9 of the last 11 Super Bowls included a quarterback on a rookie contract. Hello. How much proof do you need, right? So they didn't all win it. I'm just saying, though, those teams got there, which is, you want the Raiders to get there, right? You want the Raiders to get a Super Bowl. Yes, you want them to win it too. But I'm saying, to have a chance to get there, this plays in, and I think the Raiders do that. I had somebody say in the chat, Shedeur Sanders, what does it say? I want to read this one. Oh, Bruce, I'm going to put this up here. It says, Bruce says, don't like Sanders, and he's running off the name Sanders. If he's not Deion, I say he's not a top 5 quarterback. Bruce, have you watched him? Have you watched his highlights? Have you watched games he's played in? So, and Bruce, thank you for the comment, man. But I mean, you're basically telling me that everybody who thinks he's a good quarterback is wrong. So I don't agree with you. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's going to come out and win a Super Bowl year 1, but I like him a lot, as I like Cam Ward as well. But Murph, we again, this is the biggest issue that the Raiders have to get up. Yes, they need other things. Don't get me wrong. So don't start yelling at me because you say, well, they need this, they need that. Yes, they do. But they need that quarterback. And trust me, getting one of those young guys, if they can, right now, the Raiders are number 1 in the draft as of today, as of the end of this game. If they stay there, they'll have their choice of who they want to take. Okay. If that's the case, then you get that guy, and that is your guy to build around. He is the leader. I don't care if he's a kid coming in from college. He is your guy. You put him out there, they rally around him, and that's where you go. He is the road to redemption, if you will, for Raider Nation. And I think it's got to be their focus. Yes, they have to make plan B in case they somehow drop to 3rd and 4th in the draft and they can't get up and get one of those guys. But if not, that's where they have to go. Murph, we always talk about it here on the show, too, about the work you do with One Nation Foundation. If you don't know about One Nation Foundation and Raiders Fan Radio, they have an incredible charity where they help out people like, the Blitnikoff Foundation and others, and Raider Dad, another great organization out in Las Vegas, getting kids to games. And any super chats we have on our channel, of course, we donate the money right back to them. Murph, tell everybody about One Nation Foundation, especially those might be watching us for the first time. I want you to tell them about the organization and what you guys do.
Thank you, Scott. So once we figured out we can make some money with Raiders Fan Radio, we started a nonprofit called the One Nation Foundation, and we give 100% of the money that we make away to Raiders-related charities. So that's merchandise sales, that's advertising dollars, that's anything we get from YouTube, like any super chats, any direct donations, any of that. We give 100% of that money away. And I want to highlight this week, I want to talk about the Blitnikoff Foundation, the absolutely just you can't get better people than Angela Blitnikoff and Fred Blitnikoff. Like, they are absolutely the sweetest souls in the world, and had to go through a devastating occurrence in their life when they lost their daughter Tracy, who was taken at the hands of domestic violence. And so they created around her memory Tracy's Place of Hope and the Blitnikoff Foundation in order to take young women that are at risk of domestic violence and substance abuse, and not only give them a safe space, but to offer them rehabilitative services. This is, just learn, just domestic abilities and those kinds of things. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. And they just a week ago opened up the newest Tracy's Place of Hope in Southern Nevada, and also the Blitnikoff Center of Hope. So now not only are they offering these incredible services for these young women in terms of the physical relocation and the rehabilitative side of it, but it's also the counseling side of it. And that's what the Blitnikoff Center of Hope is that it's helping them as they work through the psychological challenges that come with those adverse things in their life. So it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. 100% of the money that we make on Raiders Fan Radio all goes to folks like that. And so you can't. I'm having trouble words. Scott, I don't struggle. The Blitnikoffs are such the real deal. They are the sweetest people in the world. And Fred and Angela are as advertised. And so I would encourage you to, heck, you don't even have to give to us to the One Nation Foundation. Give to the Blitnikoffs, man. Find the Blitnikoff Foundation. Help them out as they raise money to continue to broaden their scope. They want to roll out Tracy's Place of Hopes around the country, and we are just honored to be a small part of that. And so if you would be so kind to endorse Raiders Fan Radio, not for our benefit, but because that's how we raise money to give to these folks, is by advertising dollars. And so even if you can't, donate monetarily, hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit a thumbs up, help out here first and foremost at Silver and Black today. And thank you to Scott always for your platform. But if you want to check out a bunch of knuckleheads talk about their favorite team and have a cocktail, come check us out at Raiders Fan Radio as well, and hit a like and hit a subscribe there. Audio podcast, you can find us anywhere. But 100% of the money, we're going to remain dedicated to giving to Raiders related charities, and then even growing from there as well. So thank you, Scott. Thank you for the platform for the One Nation Foundation. We love you so much. And thank you, Raider Nation, man. It's your generosity. It is your willingness to uplift communities. And when we say that this thing is La Familia, it ain't a joke. So thank you guys very, very much. And thank you, Scott.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Thank you guys for all that you do. You and Jeff and Michelle, everybody does it. We got some people making fun of your cameras because it looks like you're having some connection issues, so it's a little fuzzy, but that's okay. Just pretend you had a bunch of drinks and you're talking to Murf at the bar, okay?
I was going to say, I'm a little fuzzy all the time. Like, what are you talking about? I'm looking at you. Yeah. You're fuzzy. Not you. Well, you, Scott, but the proverbial you, everybody in the chat, you're all fuzzy.
You're all fuzzy.
It's a Raider game. I was having cocktails. Leave me alone.
I love it. But make sure you support them. Follow Murf on X @_MURF. And then, of course, go, like you said, follow the show. And Wednesday nights are a great time. Make sure you check in on Raiders Fan Radio so that you can do that. Also, the audio. Yeah. So you're driving to work. You want a good laugh and a good conversation on your way to work on Thursday, or your commute if you're on a train or a bus, however you get to work. Do that. You can listen to it the next morning if you can't take part in it live. So do that. And again, thank you, Murf, for doing all that stuff. But Murf, going home next week to play the Falcons, the Raiders are, and you look at the situation, and like you said, Carter Bradley, I want to see them continue to feed Sincere McCormick and see what they're able to do there and let this kid try to finish it out. And hey, if he can continue to be consistent as he has this past several weeks, the Raiders can go into the offseason knowing that, hey, we got to go get some more, but at least we have somebody there that we know can run the ball for us.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm you know, can I say that I'm kind of excited to see it? It's like, I feel like we've gotten to the point of this Raider season where it's warranted to see the hardest of resets and to see where this team is going to go with their play on the field against, like you said earlier, a hungry Falcons team. This is a team that's battling for the division with those Buccaneers, and they're going to come into play, man. And so to see what this Raider team, like, we're going to really find out what this Raider team is made of. I thought that we got glimpses of that early on in this game, the way that it went downhill fast. And I thought, oh, here's the point in the season where the Raiders quit. Because we've seen that out of our Raiders numerous times where, okay, AP finally has lost the locker room, but we didn't see that today. Are we going to see it next week? And that's something to stay tuned for.
It is, absolutely. And of course, that's a Monday night game too. So the Raiders, if they're going to play a complete football game, it might be a good time to do that on Monday Night Football and while everybody's watching. And so we'll see how that all goes. But it'll be an exciting night at Allegiant Stadium, no matter what, even though it's been a tough season and all that stuff. It's always fun to get hyped up for. And I know Raider Nation does, for Monday Night Football when you have that national stage. So it'll be good. Murf, we will see you next time, my friend. I appreciate you being here as always.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. We're the Kings Monday night. Let's kick the Falcons' ass.
All right, there you go. There's Murf. And again, make sure you follow Raiders Fan Radio here on YouTube or wherever you're watching. And make sure you follow them as well on X.com and the audio version of the podcast too. So thank you guys for being with us. Mo and I will be back on Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit more about this game today, but we'll also talk moving forward, update you on the Aiden O'Connell injury, update you on what's happening around Raider Nation and the future, right? You saw Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator of the Buccaneers, who is Mo's front runner. It's who he would like to see the Raiders hire as their next head coach, actually, or at least be in the running for, because of what he's been able to do with the offense there. And you saw a little bit of that today. He did a lot against this Raiders defense. And so you got a little glimpse there as well. So we appreciate you guys being with us as always. Want to thank all of you. Want to thank Murf again. Also want to thank our producer, and that is Mike Robier over at Odyssey. Want to thank my co-host Mo Moten. Be back with me Tuesday. And thank you again for taking the time to check out the post-game show. Until Tuesday, thanks for being with us. Silver and Black Today video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. And don't forget, folks, you can't forget 150% sign-up bonus. Just use the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150 from the great people at BetUS. Talk to you guys on Tuesday. Thanks, Raider Nation. Enjoy the remainder of your weekend and have a great week ahead. Bye-bye now.